welcome! Today we're going to be talking a little bit about why you shouldn't be afraid of snakes. Snakes are quite extraordinary and amazing, and they are among my favorite types of animals in the whole world. And for a very, very good reason. These guys have been around for thousands and thousands of years, and they have managed to survive and adapt in the wild perfectly well. There's a good reason for all of us to be excited about them, to study them, and in overall to just respect them for the animal that they are. Someone once told me that fear of something comes from not knowing, and I think that fits perfectly well when it comes to snakes. Many people fear them because they don't know enough about them. So today I'm going to introduce you to some of my snakes and give you the opportunity to get to know them a little bit better. The first thing I want to do is debunk some of these myths about snakes. The first one being that they are slimy. I don't know where this comes from, but always when I'm out with my snakes and people they get to touch them for the first time, they always say, oh, they are not slimy. And no, snakes are not slimy. They are in fact very soft to touch. It almost feel a little bit like leather, especially right after they shed. They are so soft to touch, it's unimaginable. I don't know where the slimy thing comes from. Maybe it comes from, you know, you're trying to compare them with slugs or something like that. But no, the snakes, they are actually quite dry, and they also have waterproof scales. So no, they're not slimy. The second thing I want to debunk is that they strangle you. When we're talking about pet snakes, we're talking ball pythons, corn snakes, mill snakes, California king snakes, and boas as well. These guys, I wouldn't say no, they're not gonna strangle you. They have no interest in strangling you. What you have to remember is that snakes are reptiles, and these guys don't just do stuff for fun. They don't kill for fun, they kill to eat. And you as a human being is way too big for any of these snakes that I just mentioned to eat you. It's just not possible, and the snake will have absolutely no motive to strangle you. It doesn't make any sense, and the snake is probably more afraid of you than you are of it. So no, the snake is definitely not going to strangle you. The third thing I want to debunk is that they measure to see if they can eat you. I bet a lot of you have heard the story about a woman who had a snake, a pet snake, who she took out and then she laid right next to her in bed. And then she goes to the pet doctor and she says, my snake has stopped eating and it's just laying right next to me. And the doctor goes, oh, you have to be very careful. The snake is measuring to see if it can eat you. I bet you've heard that story. I've heard it 1,000 times, and people keep asking me if it's real. I have to say there is a high chance that this story is just completely nonsense. Like I talked about before, snakes are reptiles. They are not driven by doing stuff for fun. Snakes don't have this behavior in the wild. If they did, they would never ever get to eat. These guys, most of them, they lay in an ambush and then they wait for the prey to come, they strike, they kill, and they eat. They don't creep up right next to a rodent and then measure to see if it can fit inside them. Of course, because if they did that, they would never ever get to eat. No, snakes don't do that in the wild. They don't do that in captivity, not at all. Also, a snake that is capable of eating a human has to be massive. Like, we are talking a massive snake, like one of the big anacondas you find in the wild. No common pet snakes, the ball python, the boa, the corn snakes, the California king snake, don't get nowhere big enough to eat a human being. So no, snakes, they do not measure their food to see if they can eat it. The fourth thing I want to talk about is snakes being poisonous and venomous. Of course, there are some snakes that are venomous in the wild. There's like the rattlesnake and the cobra and all those kind of stuff. But the typical pet snakes that you find, at least in my country here, venomous snakes are not allowed. So the typical snakes you will find, I'm gonna say them again, ball python, corn snake, California king snake, boas, all those common pet snakes are not venomous, not at all. So should you get a bite, you're not going to die, don't worry. Like I've said before, I would much rather take a bite from a snake than I would take a bite from a cat, because I think that the cat bite hurts a lot more than the snake bite does. The fifth myth I want to debunk is that snakes are evil creatures. They're not evil creatures, they are reptiles and they are driven by their instinct, which means that they are pretty easy to be around, because the things they want to do is they want to eat, they want to be safe, and they want to mate. That's about it. They're driven by those instincts, and that makes it incredibly easy for you as an owner to deal with them. Snakes are not evil creatures, not at all. I know they've been portrayed by that by Hollywood, and I have to say, yes, I do enjoy watching those monster movies. I think it's quite fun. But when it comes to the reality reality of it, snakes are actually quite gentle creatures. You do have to have a big respect for them, of course you do. But no, they're not evil, they don't have evil intentions. They are driven purely by instincts. The next thing I want to do is take a look at what a snake really is. There are thousands and thousands of species of snakes. One of the most common to have in captivity is the ball python. And with me today I have my golden girl. She's an adult female ball python, so this is what you're looking at if you want to know what an adult ball python look at. She's a prime example of both the length and the size. And as you can see, if I can get her to uncoil, she does have a pretty decent size. She is a big girl. My golden girl here is going to help me talk about what a snake really is. This is a snake, as I talked about before. This is the ball python, also known as the royal ball python, one of the most common snakes to find in captivity. Up here is the head. They do have quite the adorable face. A lot of people do refer to them as the puppy dog face, and for a very good reason. These guys can look incredibly cute, which is also the reason why they're so very wanted as a pet. Further down here, of course, is the entire body of the snake, and then behind here we have the tail. The snake does have a heart, of course, and the heart is placed, I believe it's around here, and then it have lungs and a stomach and everything that you might know from yourself. So they're not that different when it comes to the inside. These guys are incredibly amazing. They're basically just like one big muscle, and I think that's something to really admire. These guys are incredibly strong and they can move quite fast. Not many of them do when they're in captivity because they know we are not a danger to them, so they have absolutely no reason to flee from us. But in the wild, these guys, they can move with a good amount of speed. One of the reasons I've heard that people are afraid of snakes is because that they can't read them and because that they don't have any eyelids. It might be because that when you watch them, it does seem like they're just sitting and staring at you without blinking, and that does creep a lot of people out. And I can understand that if a guy in a train looks at you that way without blinking, but for the snake, it's completely normal and it's something that you will have to deal with. They do have some kind of eyelids. They actually do have invisible scales over their eyes to protect them. So they do have, but you just can't see them. But that is one thing I've heard that people are a bit scared of, but it's nothing to be scared of. Another thing you have to remember about snakes is that they are reptiles, which means that they are different from us. This also means that you cannot project like mammal behavior onto the snakes, which is also a reason why people might find them scary, because you cannot recognize anything in the behavior of the snake, and that's totally understandable. But when you understand that they are reptiles, that they act differently than what mammals do, that might get rid of some of the fears. Another thing that you might feel uncomfortable with when it comes to snakes is the feeding. I know that in the beginning it was also a bit difficult for me to look at a rat or a mice and then knowing that the snake was going to eat it. But the fact is that snakes, they do need to eat like you and I do. Of course, you can choose to become a vegetarian. Snake cannot, and I myself am not a vegetarian. I do eat all sorts of meats as well. Not mice and rat though, I keep that for the snake. But that is just something that you will have to deal with. Go look at a cow or don't go look at a pig and see if you don't find that thing cute as well. You probably do, but you still eat it. Same with the snake. Mouse and rats, they do look cute as well. I think they're very clever creatures, the rats especially. Still, the snake needs to eat, and that's just how it is. So what can you conclude on all this? It's still difficult. If you're still afraid of snakes, I can of course understand that. But the thing is, there is not that much to be afraid of. I would recommend, of course, that you do have respect for these animals, as you should have with every animal in the world. But these guys, they're not to be feared, they are to be respected. I really do hope that this video gave you a different insight on what snakes really are. If it did, or if it didn't, please just write it right down in the comment section and let me know why. I would absolutely love to hear that. I know that we have helped cure a lot of people being scared of snakes, because once you get close to them and once you get to hold them and experience them, they are quite fascinating creatures. They really are. Please give the video a like so I know that you like what I make. It really does mean a lot to me. And while you're at it, just hit subscribe on that channel. If you have the opportunity, I would much appreciate it if you would support me on Patreon. It really does help me out a lot. As usual, you can find me on Instagram under the name jossersjungle. Thank you guys for now, and bye bye!